As athletes compete for gold medals in the Olympics, so do mountaineers strive to climb the highest mountain on each continent. On the 19th of February 2004, South African cameraman Shaun Wisedale became the first person from Africa to climb the highest mountain on each continent, the Seven Summits. More people have been into space than have achieved this mountaineering prize. Shaun's ambition to shoot a film of the highest points around the world is brought to life in this series of 8 episodes. We will follow many amazing stories and characters as we take a remarkable journey to the 7 summits. We'll visit the highest mountain in Antarctica, Mount Vinson, coldest, driest, and most remote mountain on Earth. In temperatures of 40 degrees below zero, frostbite is the enemy. We take on Mount Aconcagua to the roof of South America, where high altitude and the notorious Viento Blanco, the white wind, claims lives. Denali in Alaska is the highest mountain in North America. Avalanches, exhaustion, and its proximity to the Arctic Circle make it one of the toughest challenges of the 7. We traveled to the Himalayas, into the death zone above 8,000 meters, to the highest mountain on our planet, Mt Everest, where 1 of every 7 who reach the top don't make it off the mountain alive. The highest point in Europe is on Mt Elbrus in Russia, where high winds flatten the tents. The highest point in Australasia is Carsten's Pyramid. Freedom fighters and a neighboring gold mine makes entry impossible. Find out how our team get in. The highest freestanding mountain in the world is in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro. Perceived by many to be easy to climb, it turns back the fittest athletes. These are the 7 summits as featured in Shaun Wisedale's best-selling book, Freeze Frame. South African high-altitude mountaineering only began as recently as 1996. In that season, 15 climbers lost their lives in one of the stormiest years in history. It also proved to be the stormiest year for South African mountaineering. The first team allowed up her slopes post-apartheid broke up in discord. Back in South Africa, the leader Ian Woodall and Cathy O'Dowd were on public trial.
Explain who profits from the rest.
I don't listen to your business. Simple. Do I ask you how much you earn? Simple business.
Their deputy leader and photographer, Bruce Herod, had been left high up on the mountain and never returned.
People say we should have stopped him. We would have had to stand there and put an ice axe in his face and say, Bruce Herod, you're going down, and he would have told us to forget it. There's no doubt about it. Bruce was determined. And as far as we could see, Bruce was perfectly capable of making that decision.
Criticism you put in a little box. And when you go and climb a big mountain like Everest or any mountain, you have obstacles. You have the weather, you have sickness, you have crevasses, you have avalanches that fall on your head, and you have criticism. But if you allow criticism to affect the course of your expedition, then you will allow avalanches to do it, and then you will allow sickness and the weather to do it, and basically you'll stay in bed because you won't go climbing.
I'd been hired as a freelance cameraman to go along and capture some of the drama and the story of some of the disasters of that season. And it was on that very risky flight into Mt Everest base camp that I experienced the Himalayas, and I just fell in love with mountains.
You've read about it in the papers, you've heard about it on radio, but until you've been here and seen it, you don't know what Cathy's been through. It's an incredible achievement. South Africa, you can be really proud. Cathy, congratulations.
I could see how Sean was taken in by this. I mean, and when he said to me, I'm going to come back and climb this hill, I can see where he got that inspiration.
A month later, I saw an opportunity to get back to the Himalayas and made contact with a group of young South Africans who were trying to get to the northern side of Mt Everest.
A team of mountaineers from Gauteng is planning to conquer Mt Everest. News of the trip comes as South Africa's first Everest team is still being dogged by controversy.
Do we need another expedition to Mt Everest?
I think possibly what we want to do, apart from obviously getting to the top of the world, is integrate as a team and get back. And we've been planning this for about 2.5 years. That it coincides in the same year as probably the biggest mountaineering expedition in this country is really coincidence. So nonetheless, we need to go forth with what we've been planning, even with all the controversy of the previous expedition.
Unbeaten by the stigma, 5 young South Africans tackled the immense task of trying to gain sponsorship to go to Everest. They were Alex Harris, Sean Disney, Robin Walshaw, Anton Erasmus, and Mark Campbell.
You're doing this sort of thing, how do you justify it?
Fun. Suffering is fun. It's adventurous.
Yeah, that's what we do.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of adventure. It makes those warm beds and those nights by the fire with your girlfriend like so much more rewarding, I think, actually. When you think back on it,
I would like to speak to you about girlfriends. He's got a lot of them. He goes to them often. More often than we go to cameramen.
So with absolutely no idea of what it took to get to Mt Everest, let alone climb the mountain, because I had no climbing experience, I pleaded with this team to take me along on the basis that I make the film for them. They reluctantly agreed, and I guess at the time their biggest struggle was trying to raise the cash they needed to get to Everest. The permit alone was $15,000 on the northern side. On the southern side it was $100,000, and that's why they'd chosen the cheaper side. And the problem that they faced was that sponsors were very wary about putting money into another Everest expedition.
The controversy surrounding it has made sponsors wary.
It's made it more difficult to secure sponsorship, I believe.
If they don't get the money, they can't afford Sherpas to help carry their equipment and fasten climbing ropes.
At the moment, a lot of people out there that are interested in becoming potentially involved are very keen if it's just as a product sponsor or donating food, something like that. But to actually put money at the moment is tenuous. For someone to support us financially, there's a lot at stake.
They could also be facing difficult weather conditions, common late in the year. This time the tent will be from the Tibetan side and without oxygen.
In the end, we left with much less than we needed on what was going to be the lowest budget expedition to Everest in history.
2 tons of equipment had been sent the week before, and arriving in Kathmandu, the lads needed no introduction. Kathmandu is often referred to as the Florence of Asia, a jazzy place of celebrated art and architecture. But it's not the ideal place to have logistics problems, especially with lost cargo.
Tell him we paid him 13,000 rand to his company to get that.
Well, it's not flying till Sunday, which means when's it get you? Monday?
It should be on the plane on the 18th.
Where's the stuff sitting? In Singapore?
Sitting in Singapore. So it means Monday before we get it anyway at the luckiest, because nobody's going to be open here on a Sunday either. Now we're just wasting time away.
For a short while, all concerns were lost in Kathmandu's colossal onslaught on the senses. This delay would not only mean an added expense, but could also jeopardize the chances of reaching the summit before the climbing season ended.
891 6333 720.
Yes, I am in Kathmandu, and my Nepalese agent is waiting for visa authority from your office.
Within 2 or 3 days, you can get visa.
2 or 3 days is too long. I've been here 10 days in Kathmandu. I need to be at base camp on Rongbuk side by the end of the month. I sent visa information for Mr. Du 5 months ago.
I think today or tomorrow, impossible you get visa because only this morning we sent information to Beijing.
Why have you not sent information to Chinese embassy in Kathmandu so they can give us visa? Why must we get visa from Beijing?
Because you haven't. Yes. Yeah, I know one reason. Because you haven't sent all the money to our bank account.
So, literally stuck in Kathmandu, the team decided that they may as well get into the spirit of things. They opted for a first-rate grooming in one of the thousands of timeless barbershops in the area. For R2, one can sit back and experience the ultimate shave.
Don't speak too loud, Shona, it will catch your jugular.
Yeah, only first moves when it's over, so.
You should have one of these, Sean.
No, well, we're actually quite pissed off because we're still in Kathmandu. Sorry?
Now, I know things are going tough for you there, but I do have some good news for you.
Oh.
And that is that, yes, you've got another 10,000 rand in sponsorship.
Oh, really?
To put it.
10,000 bucks in sponsorship.
A small expedition can equip itself adequately in Kathmandu, most often with the leftovers of other expeditions. But it's a tricky affair to identify fakes from the real thing.
It's 15 there, 30 rupees.
That's 17,000.
That's 1,700.
You can get original and you made in Nepal, both you can get.
Space age equipment doubles your chances for a successful summit bid. And for those fortunate few with a healthy budget, there's supplementary oxygen at $350 a bottle.
Check it out, Russian O's there. Yeah.
But no retail therapy could sort out the complacency of the Chinese Mountaineering Authority.
Do it's Alex from Kathmandu. I'm fine, but I'm angry. Do we have a problem? We have a big problem. Do you know why the incorrect details were sent through? If I do not get the correct details and the correct visa authority today, it means I have to wait until next week, and I cannot afford to wait until next week because I have spent 2 weeks in Kathmandu when I should be spending them on Everest.
"10 days behind schedule and anxious to depart, the visas were finally in place.
Let's check them out.
They still have to get out of here.
Those visas must have cost us about 2,000 rand in hotel bills.
$180,
which we need to cough up.
Yeah, that's just for the stupid visas, let alone the cost that's spent for the bloody hotels and stuff.
180 extra bucks.
Who's got
visas.
the passports?
Wait, hold on.
He has.
This is what we've been waiting
Put them in here.
Yeah.
That.
No, at the bottom of the pack.
14 days.
Visas!
We are fine.
$180 additional to the 50 we paid each because they were done under the table. We had to crawl around Bikram's office on our hands and knees. We got them. So, we got 2 more days in Kathmandu and we are flying, boys!
After a full day's drive through the Kadari Valley, the team was abruptly halted. The road ahead had been destroyed by a devastating landslide.
Hello. Because it's typical Nepalese food. Yeah.
Actually, this one was
Very nice.
I'm going to hack this one out.
But, yeah, because me, I'm not having it.
Just shovel it in.
Oh, yeah.
We're starting out well. We'll see how it goes.
Not bad.
Not bad.
It's basic stuff, eh? Dal and flaming...
3 Pepsis.
Some funny vegetable and rice, eh? You can't go wrong, and a bit of potato.
Germany, is it possible to get pretty cool? Even Sean's having some.
The road ahead revealed the mighty force of the Himalayas. The area where the road once curved had been washed away unpredictably. But 2 tons of expedition cargo had to be moved over the gaping crack in the road. Young boys had their head slings in place, jumping at the opportunity to make some extra cash as porters. One slip, one fatal miscalculation, could sling you 400 meters down into a witch brew of mud, water and rock.
You're not going to stop one of these babies rolling. If it goes, it goes.
From the other side, overloaded porters were rushing to cross at the same time. The more loads carried, the more money they made. One porter ferried the battery over for the satellite phone. Acid spilled out of it and caused serious burns, but it was all taken as part of the job. With 2 weeks and the better part of one morning lost, the team simply had to push hard for Everest Base Camp. Anxious glances to altimeters indicated a rapid rise in altitude, and everyone wondered when the dreaded mountain sickness would set in. Hours later, another landslide, a different place, the same procedure. As with every landslide, a different truck awaited on the other side. In fact, these trucks get caught between landslides for entire seasons, or until the road is repaired, which can be many months.
And here to there, it will take actually kilometers only, maybe 2 kilometers, but it will take 1 hour journey from here to there. The road is very bad.
This bridge links Nepal and Tibet. It's known as the Friendship Bridge, which is somewhat ironic considering the incredible history of hostility right here. Since China's invasion of Tibet in 1951, horror stories of delays at customs grew. Upon entering China, all foreigners are required to register all cameras in their possession. Could you blame Sean Wisedale for dragging his feet? Custom officials have been known to confiscate items considered sensitive, including cameras, so they were kept hidden.
Is there any illegal things or illegal books they don't allow to carry it?
Oh no, we just got books on Everest.
So, for the first time in mountaineering history, books on Everest included the Hustler Girly magazine. It was time to say farewell to the Nepalese agents. Dorchi, representative of the Chinese Mountaineering Authority, booked everyone into the local hotel. For $63 per person with no running water or working toilet, everyone knew the party was over.
For 10 minutes, think about your breathing and consciously take deep breaths as deep as you can. each breath you take, get as much air as you can in your lungs, because that's the only thing that's going to get us up this mountain and get us up safely. And tomorrow it starts.
The next day, the route ascends rapidly. Tibetans know this area as the Gates of Hell. To add to the discomfort, the truck broke down. The better part of Robin's heart was left in pieces. His prized possession had fallen off the truck at the exact moment it had stalled, and the truck rolled back to crush it.
I think it's a bit of a tune. Yeah, again. Come on, Robin, sing us a birthday tune, mate.
This is the first landslide on the Tibetan side. It was here that the team first came into contact with Tibetan mountain folk and their eroded values. For each barrel carried by a native porter, they received a mark on their arm. There was, however, some considerable discrepancy over the number of loads carried.
They say 130 loads, right?
Yeah.
We don't
Not
have
possible.
130 pieces of equipment. We've got 47 barrels. We've got about 15 rucksacks. Not possible.
Yeah, that's what I put in. Move that in.
September the 3rd. First altitude entry at 3,667 meters at the town of Nyaram in Tibet.
Alex kept an accurate record of the gain in altitude, but he couldn't control the inherent grumpiness that goes with the thin air.
Cumulatively at 3,000 and 4,000
Anton
meters.
spends the next 4 days at 3,600 meters while the rest of the team moves up to Rongbo. When are you going to live? Robert, don't put hot water in that thing.
Relax, I know, alright? I know now.
And just exploded one in the doorway.
Sorry, Mark.
Deep into Tibet, there was enough time to admire this beautiful country. It's hard to believe that over 1 million Tibetans had been sacrificed in the 4 decades of Chinese invasion here. More than 100,000 live in exile, yet the world continues to avert its eyes. This is a country where 27 categories of human rights violations are listed, including murder, arbitrary imprisonment, and rape. During the Chinese Cultural Revolution, 6,524 monasteries were dynamited. However, decades of Chinese indoctrination did not touch the religious spirit of the people. Monasteries are being rebuilt, and Buddhist prayer flags are gradually replacing propaganda banners. During the much-needed process of acclimatization, bone marrow produces extra red blood cells to take oxygen from the thin air.
I'm feeling a lot more nauseous this morning than I have been. And I've got a blood nose.
Mark and Robin would end up spending an extra day while the others pushed on. The route to base camp is a day's drive over the notorious Pangla Pass at 5,300 meters. Hours later, Alex would suffer from splitting headaches, the result of too little oxygen to the brain.
Finally, it's becoming a reality. The days of reading books are over. There's not one higher point in the whole world that is higher than that. The sheer rugged and beauty of it is just wild. It's just awesome. That's Everest over there, the first view.
At the first sight of Everest, even Alex, with a severe headache, gathered himself.
What we've been dreaming about for the last 10 years, there it is in front of us. And it's just a matter of days now. It's wild.
The route leads via the stony valley of Rongbuk, site of the highest and most sacred monastery on earth. It lies just 10 kilometers from base camp at 5,030 meters. As base camp was approached, all preconceptions of it being a haven of comfort were quickly forgotten. The Chinese Mountaineering Authority man a ranger post here during the summer.
We were scheduled to come up tomorrow, but we were feeling good, so we thought we'll come up with the gear. Okay, that's good idea. Do you have a wine sample? No, we have no ship.
Sherpas are a part of almost every expedition, but because they charge $2,000 per season, the team had none.
This is base camp, The base camp we've been missioning for 18 days to get to, and we're finally here. Most of us, anyway. So what do you want to put up? Put up I believe this place is going to be home for 2 months. Alright, well, let's rig these 4. 4 singles.
That first night, under the face of Mt Everest, Anton woke every 5 minutes, suffering from periodic breathing syndrome.
You can't really expect to sleep very much the first night at 5,200. You can't, as soon as you start falling asleep, your breathing patterns change and I wake up again.
Later that day, Mark and Robin finally arrived in high spirits.
Did you guys get a glimpse of it?
Yeah.
It's wild, eh?
Hey, the South African flag's flying proudly. You can see it from all the way back there. You just see it, yeah. It's excellent.
We're at base camp. Regardless of whether we make the summit or not, we've managed to get 6 South Africans to the north side of Everest with all our stuff, and the only thing we trashed was Robin's guitar.
15 gas cylinders, big, 2 gas cylinders small, toilet rolls, and pilchards.
Food is fuel, and more than a ton had to be moved up to advanced base camp. Mountaineers can lose up to 18 kilos during an Everest assault.
See, this one's gonna have a ring in it.
It's there in the event of an emergency. When someone is forced to spend a night at one of the high camps and they start suffering from altitude sickness, that's when it's going to be used.
Okay. You're not getting any friction.
For every 3,000 meters increase in altitude, oxygen supply decreases by 25%. So most expeditions use supplementary oxygen. Without a budget, our team never had a single bottle. Statistically, climbers have a 16% chance to make the summit and get home alive. Without oxygen and Sherpas, only the mountain goddess could calculate the odds of success. A week later, the lads were acclimatized enough to set out to establish advanced base camp. 27 domesticated yaks will transport over a ton of gear and food for the next 2 months. Robin was plagued by a dry altitude cough and had to stay behind.
I was really nauseous and my headache was pounding. I didn't sleep a wink. And I think the worst thing about it all is the breathing. It feels like you've just run a marathon and you just can't draw enough oxygen into your lungs.
The route to advanced base camp is a giant pile of ball bearings. Every footstep has to be placed with care to avoid twisting an ankle. Yaks are incredibly sure-footed, but one of them misplaced its hooves and sent its cargo down the slope.
2 barrels gone down the bloody cliff. Yes. A couple of tents, Don't know what else. But whatever it is, we'll live. Doesn't matter, we'll carry on.
Waking early, almost everyone recorded weird dreams and hallucinations. At this height, there's no other way but to accept that brain and body don't receive enough oxygen to function properly.
This is 6,200 meters on the way to ABC.
Up ahead, the yak train had ground to a mysterious halt.
I think they're just having a lunch.
The herders had offloaded the barrels, and some of them had been opened.
Fucking food. It's one of your oaks. You take the food.
Sadly, the morality of these Tibetans had the team between a rock and a hard place. They claimed that they'd been paid only to go to 6,400 meters.
6-4. It's not 6-4. We want to go to 6-4 or 6-5. We want to go ABC. Sony. ABC. Guys, ABC.
It took a lot of convincing before they reloaded and continued up to advanced base camp. For 3 days, the team was locked into their tents. Held prisoner by bitter snow and the thin air, everyone suffered intense headaches as they tried to acclimatize with very little sleep.
Part of acclimatization is it's not just headaches, it's sometimes feeling nauseous. Your appetite goes, you don't sleep very well, sometimes not at all through certain nights because your metabolism during the day is okay to maintain because you can work. Breathing doesn't become involuntary anymore. You have to concentrate all the time on breathing, And when you sleep, metabolism goes down, and sometimes you can't sleep at all because your pulse rate goes too low, and you can't function anymore. So you will have no sleep, and then you wake up the next morning. You haven't had a lot of sleep. You're exhausted. Altitude hits you again, and you have to carry on climbing. So it just generally exhausts you more and more and more, and it's a very, very big part of mountaineering.
Eventually, the sun broke through, and although the team were completely snowed in, everyone's spirit was lifted. It was time to find out who the neighbors were. First visit was to the Indonesian expedition led by a Nepalese Sherpa, Kaji. With 3 previous summits of Everest, Kaji and his team of Sherpas helped erect the tiny South African mess tent. Kaji became a respected friend, and the lads reciprocated his efforts with some convenient boil-in-the-bag rice.
You leave in the bag, you put the bag in the pot, in water for 10 minutes, boiling water. Take out, boom.
I see, okay. Put it inside water.
Actually, should we just give them 2 bags? It's 26.
Yeah,
no. Okay, there's 13 people in there. But it's more. This one, I'll give you 26.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
for some reason, Kaji likes the boys from down south. He likes us Africans. Anyway, it's a good thing, because I reckon he's the strongest oak on this mountain at the moment. And him and his 12 boys have got more experience than half of Nepal and half of mountaineering in the world. So I think we're in good hands, old Kaji and his boys.
Kaji and his 11 hardy boys had set in place fixed lines on the mountain. These ropes, anchored to the ice, secure climbers should they slip or fall into hidden crevices. The ropes are also a lifeline on the route when the visibility deteriorates or when storms set in. $1,500 were paid to Kaji for the use of his fixed lines.
People say that you can make a lot of money from climbing.
Yes, I do. In people who work in city, they make like 60 American dollars each month. But while we are climbing, we make more than $600 a month.
The team climbed for the sport, whereas the Sherpas climbed to make a living. And it's a risky business too.
And there will be some casualty, but even you stay in city, you have a bad luck, you can be dead or accident. And while you are climbing, there will be casualty sometimes, but not very frequently.
Sad news came from the southern side the next day. 3 mountaineers had been killed. One of them was the famous Lobsang Jangbu, who had summited Everest 5 times. The team were ready to provision Camp 4 on the North Col. The North Col is 600 vertical meters and 9 hours of grueling climbing.
Climbing up that steep slope and into the thin air at 7,000 meters was really exhausting. It was the most exhausting thing that I'd ever done, and I was carrying my camera and tripod trying to capture these pictures. And eventually I slogged my way up and I got up to the North Col. And when I got back to the camp, Alex decided that the safe option for me, because this was my first climb, was that I would not be allowed higher than 7,000 meters.
The second South African expedition to Mt Everest was progressing, slowly. Robin had come up from base camp and everyone crammed into the tiny mess tent for their first meal together.
Spaghetti, meatballs, baked bean and mixed veg.
Hello, boys! Woo! It's good. My first official ABC no-shop, with everybody here. To crack up another can of meatballs, because there's a wedge of spaghetti there.
How long did it take to do the spaghetti?
F***ing ages, Yes.
For the first time, we united at Advanced Base Camp, or Camp 3. Robin came up from Base Camp. He had been acclimatizing a bit longer than everyone else, and that means him as well as Mark Campbell are all acclimatized, so the six of us are doing pretty well at Advanced Base Camp.
All was not well. Robin was still plagued by a dry altitude cough, but that wouldn't keep him off the slopes. When he climbed Kilimanjaro, he started coughing blood at 4,500 meters. Now he was pushing his own limits and flying up. Sean Wisedale was rolling the camera when Robin broke his altitude record.
My first time to 7,000.
Are you shooting, mate?
Huh?
Are you shooting?
Totally exhausted. The last about 150 vertical meters. I really thought I should turn back, but it was worth it, I suppose. The North Col.
Every climber finds his own way of coping. The Czechoslovakian expedition, with 16 world-seasoned mountaineers, proved that climbing was about extremes, and they carried their own brand of oxygen.
Everything under control. Can I have a cigarette, please, buddy?
What's the key to the summit, right?
What's the key to the summit? Drink at least 2 gallons of booze and have a pack of cigarettes ready.
There were other weird incidents. Greg Connors, the leader of the international expedition's cameraman, had suffered such acute mountain sickness that he had disappeared to an imaginary liquor store to go and buy booze and cigarettes.
So we had to look till 4 in the morning to find the idiot, and he was just gone.
Kaji invited the team over to his mess tent for dinner and a look at how a $90,000 expedition is stocked and run.
This is cooler. Wow, Kaji's restaurant.
Clara Samawati was Kaji's client. She was in line to become the first Indonesian woman to the summit. The next morning there were some rumblings in the camp.
Kaji over here thinks he owns the North Col route, and he basically says we have to climb a whole nother route, that our permit means nothing to him, and he owns this mountain.
The dispute was that Greg had refused to pay Kaji for the use of his fixed ropes.
To have some crazy Sherpa threaten an American citizen's life in China is bad news. The guy's in deep shit.
These soap operas unfold themselves on a yearly basis on the slopes of Everest. But nothing could hold Kaji back when it came to Clara's summit attempt. He was chasing his summit bonus as he and his team turned into tiny dots on their way to glory. In the final analysis, the summit was seen by many as the Sherpas' quest for status and money, as they literally dragged Clara up and down.
You can have someone like Clara, who, no offence, but is not the strongest climber mountaineer I've ever come across, you know, who literally gets, you know, taken up the mountain, and she'll come back and she's a heroine. The world thinks she got to the top.
I believe if she had started a day later from here, she wouldn't be successful because of the wind.
The spell of good weather may have made it possible for Kaji and Clara to succeed, but it was something of the past for everyone else.
So we're going to do it, we're going to go for it anyway.
Alex's plan was to head up the North Ridge to Camp 5 at 7,600 meters. The next day up to Camp 6 at 8,200, and at midnight the same day, they'll go for the summit. The team went back up to the North Col, a bleak, unforgiving place. It's boundlessly impressive to the eye, but raw and unrelenting to the body.
When you sleep on the ice, your body heat melts it at night. So now after a couple of days, I have a massive indentation in my tent where my body is. And it's starting to get quite uncomfortable.
Ice cold and blazing white, you need ice to prevent dehydration. When you're dying of thirst, you have to melt it before you can drink it. The risk of stomach infection is high. Sean Disney suffered in particular. He also had flu and was eliminated from the summit party.
Are you feeling sure? Not too good, but I've got a cold. At the moment I'm feeling alright, but if I push too hard I'm going to end up jeopardizing something or someone. So I'm going to go down and man ABC, rest for 5 days, take it from there.
The conditions for the summit bid seemed perfect.
Yeah, I mean, if Clara could get up this thing, flipping out.
But here temperatures can fluctuate from plus 30 to minus 30 degrees in 3 hours. It only took an hour and a half for the guys to realize that Mount Everest had no intention of surrendering. The wind made climbing absolutely impossible.
It set me off my feet once and down to my knees twice. It's blowing, man. Absolutely blowing. Well, I don't know if I've got any toes or fingers or a nose, but other than that I'm feeling great.
Alex was alone on the ridge and was confronted with one of the biggest decisions he would ever make. Feeling strong, he felt the well-known longing to push his limits and just do it. But he had a very long way to go. Alex had made the rule that no team member was allowed on the ridge alone. He had no backup, and so he had to turn back.
I'm happy enough to call it quits at this point and try and go down and get some rest. I haven't slept properly in 5 nights, and these winds are just getting worse.
The challenges of Mount Everest are so magnetic that it imprisons you, and when you finally surrender, in a very strange way, you taste freedom.
Well, that was my introduction to mountaineering, and well, what an introduction it was. We had been beaten by the bad weather and the wind, and we'd been hammered by that altitude, and we'd gone 65 days without a shower. I'd lost 11 kilograms of weight, but at the end of the day I was a happy camper, and I came away pleased because I had a box full of beautiful pictures and a great story about the youngest expedition and probably the lowest budget expedition to Mount Everest in history. And although at the time I felt like I never wanted to see another mountain ever again, it wasn't long before I realized that the climbing bug had bitten.
In the next episode, Sean and the team take on Mount Vinson, the highest mountain in Antarctica. It's an action story you don't want to miss.